everyone. This is good audio. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Welcome to everyone here, and thank you for being with us tonight, October 18th, 2018, for this candidate forum, introducing candidates for the California Assembly District 15 seat. Our thanks to College Preparatory School for sharing their space tonight with the community. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Oakland. The League of Women Voters is a trusted, nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not support or oppose candidates or parties. The advocacy arm of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. This forum is being presented by our Voter Services and Education arm, which does not take positions or advocate them. Joining the League of Women Voters of Oakland this evening as our co-host is the East Bay Housing Organization. Thank you very much, EPHOU. And our other co-sponsor we're happy to have is the Rockridge Community Planning Council. Thank you, RCPC. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates and all three of the sponsoring groups have all agreed to participate under the ground rules set for this forum, which basically means that everyone's cooperating to have a civil and polite process tonight. As a matter of courtesy, we're asking you to please switch off all your electronic devices or put them on silent. Please be aware that campaign literature and other forms of campaigning, such as buttons, t-shirts, signs, are not permitted in the forum room, but they are outside. This is in order to maintain neutrality. California's Assembly District 15 stretches across two counties, Alameda and Contra Costa, from Hercules to Piedmont. I'd like to introduce your two candidates this evening. First, Ms. Jovanka Beckles. Your other candidate is Ms. Buffy Wicks. Our thanks to them both. Let's go over a few ground rules. Our intention tonight is to give our audience, you, the opportunity to hear a variety of questions from both our candidates. And so we ask for your respect of the time we have by refraining from interruptions of applause or other emotions. In other words, that applause was great. Your enthusiasm and applause will be welcome at the end of the forum as well. As audience members arrived, our volunteers have been providing cards for you to submit questions if you'd like. The questions will be screened to avoid duplications or questions that are aimed for specific individuals. If you'd like to submit a question, just raise your hand, and our volunteers will come around and give you a card. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for an opening statement, and the order was determined by drawing lots. Ms. Wicks will go first, followed by Mrs. Beckles. Timekeepers here in the front row will signal the candidates this evening with bright colored signs signaling 30 seconds and stop. So that's right in the front row, keeping track of the time. The order of answering questions will be alternated, and the candidates will have 1.5 minutes each for each question. They'll have 1.5 minutes for their responses. Again, we'll be keeping time on those responses. There will be no time for separate rebuttals. Following the questions, each candidate shall have 1.5 minutes for a closing statement. So now, let's get started with opening statements, beginning with Ms. Buffy Wicks. Anyone can stay seated, correct? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you very much for hosting. My name is Buffy Wicks, and I'm running to be your next Assemblywoman. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audiences. I've had many house parties in this district. I am born and raised here in the great state of California. I actually grew up in a trailer in a very working class community not far from here. I first moved to the Bay Area a little over 20 years ago, and I lived here on and off, and I moved back home recently to raise my family because this is the community that I wanted to be in. I spent my entire career working in progressive politics. I was an organizer in the United Student Commercial Workers Union. I was an organizer for Howard Dean, and I worked for President Obama for 6 years. It is these progressive values that have led me to make the decision to take no corporate money in this race. I'm running because I want to fix our homelessness crisis. I want to create more affordable housing, have more homes for people to live here, ensure we have health care for all. I want to make sure we have clean air and clean water to drink for our children and their children. These are critical issues facing our community. I'm very honored to be supported by great leaders in this community. 8 of the 10 mayors of this district are supporting my race. Senator Kamala Harris, our next governor Gavin Newsom, President Barack Obama. But what I'm most honored to have is the support of thousands of voters across this district. I would be honored to have your support tonight. I look forward to the conversation, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight.
Thank you very much. Ms. Beckel.
Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you all for coming out here to learn more about this very, very critical election. I'm Javanka Beckles. I'm running to build a state government that puts people over profit. For decades, I've worked as a mental health professional for Contra Costa County. For the past 8 years, I've been on the Richmond City Council, where I've helped lead us to win landmark progressive policies. I will always stand with working people against corporate interests. In Sacramento, we have a Democratic supermajority in both houses, but billionaires and big money PACs still have way too much control. That's the reason why our legislature froze Medicare for all and has not taxed the rich fully to fully fund our public schools. Now, pro-charter school, anti-Medicare for all billionaires are pouring more money and millions of dollars into this district. This is the real issue in this election. I have about 5 different IEs on behalf of my opponent. Read the fine print. The California Medical and Dental Associations who are fighting hard against single payer, and Ed Boyce, pro-charter PACs, funded by billionaires bent on destroying our public schools. These are the same folks who are sponsoring very disgusting TV ads against Tony Thurmond. There's a reason why they're not supporting me. I'm proud to be endorsed by Congresswoman Barbara Lee, nurses, teachers, and I invite you to join this movement.
Thank you very much. It's our great pleasure to include students tonight from college prep school. So I would like to invite the 3 students who are going to lead off our question session here. The first question will be posed by Ms. Gabrielle Battle. She's a senior here at college prep. Are we all starting already?
So I guess I'll start since Buffy started first. So how will I engage with the different neighborhoods? In essence, the same way that I have been engaging for the last 10 years that I've been in been a public servant, and that's reaching out to organizations, that's sitting down with them, that's listening to them. I've worked as a mental health professional for 18 years, and I have been engaged with children, with families, with teachers, with principals, police officers, social workers, probation officers, because that's the job that I've been doing for 18 years. I've been engaging with the community. I've been in their homes. I've been in over thousands and thousands of homes for the last 30 years that I've been working with folks in this very district. And that's really my mode of operation. That's how I operate as a leader. I don't profess to have all the answers, but I know that collectively we have the answers, and that's the only way that I intend to serve you in Sacramento. But that's by listening to you and by responding with bold, progressive policies that benefit my community.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wick.
So I've been in community organizing my entire career. I helped develop President Obama's community organizing model that had the highest turnout The Obama Coalition is what we called it, African Americans, Latinos, young people, the AAPI community, and others. And that organizing work is built on listening and being in people's living rooms. I've had over 220 house parties across this district since I got into this race. I've been in every nook and cranny. I've been in living rooms of all shapes and sizes. And if I win this race, I want to continue to do house parties as an elected official, because I think our elected officials need to do a lot more listening. And if you look at my policy platforms on my website, I've had a lot of help with those with smart policy people, but a lot of it is derived from ideas that come from those house parties, because I believe that's the type of moment that we are in right now, one that demands a participatory democracy. Those are the types of things I still want to do. If I am lucky enough to be able to serve you in the capacity as a legislator in Sacramento, this campaign isn't just about me. This campaign is about us and what we can do together. So I will need your help to do that. And I've done this in other roles. When I served President Obama in the White House, I was the Deputy Director of the Office of Public Engagement. It was literally in my title. And my job was to bring together diverse groups of people to solve problems. And that is what I've done my entire career. It's what I want to do here, hopefully starting in January with your help and your support. So I will continue to listen and be available for folks. I actually passed out my cell phone number on all of our literature pieces, so about 80,000 voters I think have it now. Happy to give it to you tonight if you want it.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Our second question will be presented by another senior, Michael Liu.
Be available for folks. I actually passed out my cell phone number on all of our literature pieces, so about 80,000 voters I think have it now. Happy to give it to you tonight if you want it.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Our second question will be presented by another senior, Michael Liu.
So I'm someone who grew up in a trailer and worked at the White House, and my path was made possible because of the California Community College system. I'm a proud alum of our California Community College system, and for me, that was the ladder up that I needed. I had parents that pushed me to think bigger than my little town, but I also had those educational opportunities afforded to me. And right now, not everyone has those educational opportunities afforded to them. You know, California created the master plan in 1960. That set forth our community college, CSU, and UC system. And the vision of that was anyone who wants to be able to go to college should be able to do it for free. We've way walked back that vision. Right now, UC Berkeley gets about 10% of its budget from the state. It's almost a private institution. We've got to fund our higher ed. And if you look at the diversity issues at our universities, last year's entering class was 3% African American. That is not right. I support the repeal of 209. I support affirmative action. I support increased funding for our higher ed system. I think college should be free for low and middle income students, and not just tuition, but cost of housing as well. Look at Berkeley. We have homeless students at UC Berkeley right now. That is the state of affairs of higher ed right now. And if you look at our corrections spending, we've gone up 500% since the early 80s. We built 22 new prisons to 1 new UC campus. This is not right. We've got to fund our higher ed. And I believe that not just because I'm a bleeding heart liberal, which I am, but also because it's our economic engine. And one way to do this is to close the commercial loophole on Proposition 13.
Thank you very much. Ms. Beckles.
Our public school systems are under attack. They're under attack in some very dangerous ways. Under attack in 2 ways. They're being underfunded, and charter schools, the proliferation of charter schools. Number 1 is funding. You know, our public schools have had decades of cuts. We've all seen it. We've seen all the cuts to arts and pay and music and sports programs. So I'm really disappointed that billionaires have put so much money, millions of dollars into this election. So that's why you'll see, when you get a moment, to go to my platform, javante.org, you'll see my plan for funding our schools, from preschool and child care all the way to higher education. And I don't just believe that we should have free tuition just for community college. I believe we should have tuition free for our UC systems, and all of our higher education system, not just our community colleges. And one of the things that we're seeing how money is being poured into our district from the charter school, the billionaires. We're seeing the attack on Assemblymember Tony Thurmond and his race. These same billionaires who are funding the fight against him are the same billionaires who are funding my opponent. I'm on the side of teachers, I'll be on the side of working families, and you can count on me to be a strong advocate for our public school system and our higher education system. I believe that we're in danger as human beings. Our planet is in trouble, our planet is burning, it's flooding, we're seeing unprecedented levels of strong storms throughout the country. And so we don't have time for small, incremental changes. We need radical, bold policies right away. So I support SB 100 that brings us to 100% renewables by 2045. However, I believe we don't have that kind of time. We don't have till 2045. Scientists are saying that we only have 12 years at this point to get it together. Otherwise, we will be at the point of no return. So I believe that we have to end fracking, we have to ban it, we have to end digging, we have to stop coal trains and bomb trains from coming through our neighborhoods. That's why I have been endorsed by by all of the environmental organizations in California. I'm really proud of that because they've seen my track record, they've seen my voting record standing up to corporate polluters like Chevron enrichment. They have seen me stand up to these polluters because they know that I've not taken not 1 cent from them. But in my plan, I believe we can bring forward, we can have a Green New Deal where we tax corporate polluters, where we tax them for digging. California is the only oil extracting state not taxing. We can do that and create a Green New Deal for infrastructure and create jobs for all.
So this is a very urgent issue, and I feel this because I have a 22-month-old little girl, and I think about the future that she's going to live in. And so it's very, very personal. We have to do everything we can. I support SB 100. Fundamentally, we have to move to more renewables, less fossil fuels. And I think there are ways we can do it, but we are in an urgent moment. I also support things like Assemblymember Phil Tang had a bill to end the sale of gas cars by 2040. This is critical, right? But when we do that, we also have to ensure that we have the infrastructure to support renewables or to support electric vehicles, and we also have to make sure that those cars are affordable for low-income communities. Everyone has to be able to access this new economy. So I think these things are important. I also support ending fracking. I also think we have to resist Trump at every path, every possible way. As he's trying to deregulate and gut the EPA and not allow us to continue to be leaders as we are, we have to continue to fight on this every which way, adhering to the Paris Climate Accord, taking a leadership role when our president decides not to. We can step up to the plate and do that. We have the leadership here in California to do it. I do believe our next governor, Gavin Newsom, will continue to fight on this. I want to work with him. He's endorsed my campaign and work side by side with him to ensure that we continue to do this.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Gabrielle, to Michael, and Lucy. Appreciate your questions. We'll begin this question with you, Ms. Wicks. What measures would you support to prevent at-risk households from becoming homeless? And what would you do to provide housing for those who are already homeless? Please let us know both your short-term and long-term strategies.
Sure. So the first thing that I will do if I get elected is pass anti-gouging legislation in the state of California. This is very critical. Right now we see people, their rents are going up 30, 40, 50, 60%, and this is one of the main causes of the homelessness crisis that we're in. Passing anti-gouging legislation, I think, is critical. Secondly, I would increase the renter tax credit. Right now it's $60 a year. Homeowners get a huge tax incentive, renters don't. If we increase the renter tax credit significantly, put some money into the pockets of renters who desperately need it. 3/4 of Californians are one $700 emergency away of going into poverty. And if you're someone who's on the brink and your car breaks down and you need to spend $600 to get it fixed, so you need to go to work, and you don't have that money and you get evicted, that's not right, right? So we need to put money, or create some kind of rental assistance fund to help folks. Thirdly, I would work to ensure that our renters have a legal defense fund for renters facing unfair evictions. And this is proven to work. When renters have legal recourse, it turns out the eviction rates come down significantly. So we have to be able to do all of these things. Fourthly, I would push to have reforms on Costa-Hawkins, including a rolling date that would, about a 20-year rolling date or something to that effect, that would give municipalities more authority to have rent control measures should they so choose to do that. The last thing I'll say is we have got to build more affordable housing. That is a critical piece of this. It's one of the things I care most about. All of our communities are under their goals in terms of where they need to be, so building affordable housing is a critical piece of this, and creating more pathways for homeownership for renters. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick request, Ms. Beckles, if you could move your phone or turn it off, it's creating some static.
I think both of them, please. If we could go to airplane mode or off.
Thank you.
The Geiger counter will cease.
Thank you very much. Ms. Beckles.
So the for-profit housing model is not working for us. It's not going to build the necessary affordable housing that we need in the Bay Area. It's just not going to happen. Oakland, for example, just last year built 4,000 luxury market rate housing, and only 324 affordable housing were built. So we can't depend on them. We can't depend on renters credit, because all that's going to do is make these developers, these landlords, increase people's rent, because they're going to assume that since they're getting a deal, right, with their taxes. So that is not the answer. The answer is for us to build a more affordable housing, and we can do that. We can do it by taxing speculators. We can do it by taxing we can do it by taxing all of the units that are vacant right now. So we can tax vacant properties. My plan is to build hundreds of thousands of new, not-for-profit public housing for our residents within 10 years. And we can do that. In the 5th largest economy in the world, we can do that. We can protect renters, we can protect homeowners, because when we have stable communities, that benefits all, and I intend to repeal Costa-Hawkins, not just reform it, as my proponent mentioned.
Thank you very much. Ms. Beckles, this question goes to you first. Comes from our audience. It's about campaign finance. Campaigning has become very expensive and money-driven. As an assembly member, what would you do to get money out of politics in California?
As a 2-term elected official in Richmond, I've already proven that it can be done. I've proven what we can do when we join forces. I've proven that a candidate who's not accepting one dime from any corporation, we can win. And I've done that in this election. We have, the problem is that we have a system that allows dark money to come into our races. And no, it doesn't come through writing a check from AT&T or a check from Google. It comes from these CEOs, or it comes from independent expenditures. And so far, my opponent has benefited from hundreds of thousands of dollars from the same billionaires who do not want Medicare for all, the same billionaires who want to privatize our schools and who want to continue to have private prisons, the same billionaires who want to destroy our unions. And I am not benefiting from any of that money, and there's a reason why. Because the billionaire class are not going to invest in a candidate without expecting a return on that investment, and they know that they will not be able to get a return on investment from me. And so I have not benefited from those, and that really is the problem. That's how you do it. You don't take IEs, and you don't take money directly.
Ms. Wicks?
So my opponent has benefited from independent expenditure campaigns, and they are pervasive, not only in this race, but across the board. And this, to me, is one of the main cruxes of the main issues in politics right now, is these independent expenditure campaigns. So for me, the policy levers are figuring out how do we abate their usage. It's very challenging because of Citizens United for us to be able to do this, because of how the Supreme Court decided on this decision, which has made it very difficult. It's why, for me, I've chosen to take no corporate money in this race. You won't find a single check from a single corporation in my filings. And my opponent has talked quite a bit about, the billionaires who are funding my campaign. I have received some money from people like Tom Steyer, who does have a lot of wealth, and he's funding the progressive movement across this country. And people like George Soros, who also fund a lot of the progressive work across this country. And these are folks that I've met along the way working for President Obama, who fund a lot of progressive candidates up and down the state of California. But to me, we've got to wrap our heads around how we negate the independent expenditures. We saw this also in this race in 2014. When Tony Thurmond had big expenditures for him. It's a challenge for all these races. These candidates don't want these independent expenditures going out there and communicating on their behalf. Why would anyone want a third party communicating on their behalf? So that's what we have to wrap our heads around. We need public financing desperately. We need more transparency, more daylight around our money in politics. It needs to make it easier for you all to know where the resources are coming from that fund these campaigns. And these are things that I will work for in January when I get this job.
Thank you. Ms. Wicks, the next question goes to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Governor Brown recently signed a bill that will end cash bail in California next year, replacing it with a system that gives judges more power to decide who can be released. Would you have voted for this legislation, and why?
So this bill was not perfect, but we definitely needed reforms, and we will continue to need reforms. And so ultimately, I would have voted for this bill. The fines and fees that handcuff low-income communities and communities of color are a big problem in our criminal justice system. We've got to create a just criminal justice system. And this goes across the board, not just around fines and fees, but when you look at our policing, when you look at the racial inequities within our criminal justice system, and the fact that, 1 in 17 white men will go to jail, 1 in 3 black men will go to jail. This isn't right. And you see these racial inequities everywhere, from arrests to booking, to sentencing, to parole. So we need more reforms around that as well. We need more reforms around policing. We need implicit bias training desperately. We need de-escalation training desperately. So these are some of the reforms, and we have got to close down our prisons. Not all of them, but we need to close down a lot of them, because we went through this whole thing where we were going to mass incarcerate our way to safety, right? And that doesn't work. 3 strikes, you're out. That doesn't work. It destroys communities. So we have to wrap our heads around this. I also support reentry programs and giving folks a pathway when they come out of prison to be able to handle this. But ultimately, yes, I would have voted for the bill.
Thank you. Ms. Beckles.
I've been talking about reforming the criminal justice system this entire race, and one of those issues has to do with reforming the current bail bond system that disproportionately affects people of color and poor people. So if you're rich, chances are you're not going to spend 1 day in jail. But if you're poor, if you're a person of color, chances are you will. And while I appreciate the fact that the author was trying to do the right thing, it was not justice. Because the way I see this, particularly as a woman of color, is that replacing one racist system with another, that's not justice. That's not reforming, right? That's not reform. So I doubt that I would have voted for that bill as it was written, because it still gives judges lots of power to still keep people of color incarcerated or held under a bond system. So I've been the champion for police reform, for criminal justice reform, enrichment. I think it's important that you look at a person's voting record and a track record, and I have that enrichment. We have a centralized reentry program in Richmond. We have ceasefire walls. Our crime has dropped in Richmond because of the work that I've done with the community, and I'm going to do the same thing in Sacramento.
Thank you. Our next question to you, Ms. Beckles, is on education. What measures would you support to improve educational equity across the state, improving salaries and treatment of our teachers?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm incredibly proud to be endorsed by teachers associations, faculty associations, so the California Teachers Association, the California Federation of Teachers, community colleges, faculties, the local teachers associations like the United Teachers of Richmond, the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. The reason they've endorsed me is because they've seen me stand in solidarity with them. They've seen me stand in solidarity for better contracts. They've seen me stand in solidarity for better pay, better wages, because we all know that our teachers' working conditions, right, are our students' learning conditions. And we have to reduce class sizes. We have to pay teachers more. We have to bring back resources that make our children's learning environment fun, right? Like art programs, like music, like sports programs. We have to have a moratorium on charter schools so that we can continue to fully fund our public schools. And I wasn't sure, was that a red sign? Oh, okay. Yes, that's why I support a moratorium on charters. We've done that in Richmond. We have created policy that says there will be no new schools being built in Richmond. We can do the same thing in Sacramento because I am and will be an advocate for our public school system that has been drained of resources. And we can have the resources in the fifth largest economy in the world by reforming Prop 13 and many other creative ways of funding our schools.
Thank you. Ms. Wicks?
So we are 47th out of 50th in standard of living for children in California. And our third grade math and reading scores are 43rd in the nation. Our per pupil spending, depending on the survey you read, is 41st or 46th. And 1 in 4 children in California go hungry every day. And we used to have the best public education system in the country. So there's a lot we need to do to fix it. One, we've got to pay our teachers more. The starting salary at Oakland Unified is $46,000 a year. If you're coming out as a new teacher, you have $100,000 in student loan debt. You want to get married, have a baby, buy a house? You cannot do it here. It's too expensive. Teachers are living in Stockton and Tracy, commuting to Oakland and Berkeley. We've got to pay our teachers more. We have to provide more professional development, more mentoring, more coaching. We have to look at the total social and emotional learning of kids, which means making sure that we have things like school therapists and school nurses, and our libraries open longer, and our restorative justice programs that give kids the tools they need to be able to operate in the complex societies in which they are living. We have to support early childhood programs. This is critical. I think 0 through 5 should be brought into the K-12 system. One of the main indicators on if you're going to end up in the criminal justice system is how many words you speak by the time you're in kindergarten. And I view this as a feminist issue because most of those caregivers and educators are women of color, and immigrant women, and they're not paid enough. They need to be paid more and professionalize that industry. We have to hold our charter schools more accountable. These are things we have to do. How do we pay for all is the big question. I'm a big believer in closing the commercial loophole on Proposition 13. If we make Chevron and Transamerica and Disney pay their fair share, they would pay about $11.4 billion that could go back into our state budget and fund all the things that I just mentioned.
Thank you, Ms. Wicks. What is your position, refrain from applauding. What is your position on Governor Brown's 2 legacy projects, the Delta Tunnel proposal and the high-speed rail system?
Sure. So I don't support the tunnels because I think we need to do a couple of things first. One, we have to make sure our current water infrastructure is working. We have leaks and things of this nature, make sure those are fixed. Secondly, we should be doing drought policies in non-drought years. And also working to figure out how we can use more gray water. Australia does this very well. We don't do it very well here. And the third thing, and this is the toughest nut to crack, is the water that goes to big ag. That's where the majority of our water goes. We subsidize it. It goes to corporate farmers. This is a tough third-rail political issue, but it's one that we've got to be able to tackle because that's where the majority of our water goes. On the high-speed rail, I support it, but for me, it's a question of when. And right now, we need more resources in our BART system. We need a new Transbay tunnel. Anyone here go to San Francisco during the workday? During the work week, it's very difficult. So I support, first and foremost, getting more transportation resources here locally in the Bay Area, because we are sitting in our cars, and 39% of our greenhouse gas comes out of our exhaust pipes, by the way. So we've got to support the transportation infrastructure that we have here now, first.
I don't support the Delta tunnels. I don't support it because I don't believe that we should be diverting water for food to Southern California for luxury housing. I don't believe that that's something that's sustainable, but also it's disruptive. It's disruptive to our ecosystem, and that's why, once again, I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club and so many environmental organizations, because they understand that I will be a champion for our planet, for our environment. The high-speed rail, I think it's a good idea in concept. It's a great idea. We need to get out of our cars. We need more public transportation. However, I believe that the devil's in the details. There are so many different issues that we haven't really considered and looked at deeply in order to make sure that when it's being built, that the work is provided by union members. There's so many different issues concerns that I have around it. Where will it go through? Will it be going through communities of colors? Will those communities get an opportunity at those jobs? Will the communities of color be able to even afford it? Because the cost to build it is going to be astronomical. So if it's astronomical to build, you know that it's going to be incredibly expensive to ride. And I don't think that will be something that will benefit low-income communities.
Thank you. Ms. Beckles, what is your position on establishing a single-payer health care system in California? Should California move ahead with creating a single-payer system independent of the federal government? If so, on what sort of timeline? And how would you finance such a single-payer system?
Absolutely. I am a big advocate for a single-payer for all system. I mean, a Medicare for all single-payer system. I'm a big advocate for it. I talk about it. I believe that we can do it. That's why I'm endorsed by the California Nurses Association. That's why I'm endorsed by so many healthcare providers, because I'm a healthcare provider myself, and I see how this system is not working. I believe that when we go into a single-payer healthcare for all system, it will benefit all of us. We can pay for it. Because right now we are paying for it in so many ways. This for-profit system is not working. So much of the cost goes towards the middle person, right? And at this point, we're spending $361 billion, and that doesn't even cover all Californians. We can go into a single-payer for all system that would only cost us about $331 billion. Now, how do you pay for that? We're paying for it. This is the 5th largest economy in the whole world, within the largest economy in the world. When we close Prop 13, the loophole that allows corporations to not pay their fair share of taxes, this is one way that we can fund this current system. Now, how do we make it happen? I realize that we have to have.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Wicks.
I worked on health care. I helped pass the Affordable Care Act at the White House for President Obama. I absolutely believe that we have to have a single-payer system, and frankly, it should be at the federal level. But we in California can drive the conversation here. We can drive the change that we want to see. But here's the reality. In order to get it in California, we need a waiver from the federal government to the tune of $200 million. I don't think Donald Trump's going to give California that waiver so that we can experiment with single-payer health care. So here's what we should do in the meantime. One, we should make sure our current healthcare system is working. We have a pretty good exchange here. We put a lot of sweat equity into it and political capital and will, but we've got to pass the individual mandate here. Donald Trump's trying to take us Thelma and Louise style off the cliff with nothing, so we got to make sure what we have works. So I would pass an individual mandate. Secondly, we've got to fix our reimbursement rates. We have some of the worst reimbursement rates in the country. talk to providers, and this provides a real challenge for folks that need health care, that are poor, working class. Thirdly, we've got to tackle our uninsured immigrant communities in terms of making sure, tackling that issue and making sure that they have access to the care that they need. If we can do all those things and then also do a public option that can live on the exchange as an intermediate step until we get to a 2020 and beyond environment where we have President Kamala Harris or President Cory Booker or President Kirsten Gillibrand, so we can actually work with someone in the federal government to be the first state in the nation to have a single-payer health care. Those are the steps we need to do while we change the White House so we can actually have single-payer health care here in California.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wicks, Governor Brown already signed Assembly Bill 2923 into law, allowing BART to develop housing on BART property without being subject to city zoning. SB 827 to require dense housing near transit failed. Would you support a reintroduced version of Senate Bill 827? And how would you modify it to benefit the greatest number of Californians?
Sure. So I really believe that we need more transit-oriented housing. And we basically have three options for housing. One is to continue to do what we're doing, continue to lose our communities of color, our low-income communities, skyrocketing prices. Two is to build out towards Stockton, out in our open lands, track homes as far as the eye can see and roll in our cars, right? Or three is to build walkable communities, taking advantage of our public transportation, building more around our BART stops. And I think we can do this in a smart way. And to me, this is the right path of where we need to go. We can incentivize things like ADUs. We can build in and around our BART stops, and we don't have to have, I'm not talking about 20-story buildings. I'm talking about adding, 2 or 3 stories in places that make sense, right? So SB 827, I have heard it's potentially going to come back. I've heard that what they're planning on doing is giving local municipalities more agency in terms of how or where they build. Still expecting them to build, but providing more carrots and sticks for local municipalities. It gives local municipalities more ability to sort of control their destiny on this issue, but still requires them to build, and this is the direction I think that we need to be going in, and I would support something to that effect. But I do strongly believe we need more transit-oriented housing. We are about 2 million homes shy of where we need to be here in California. We have the fewest homes for the greatest number of people of any state in this country. So that means that we are going to have to build, but again, I think we can do it in smart ways.
Thank you. Ms. Beckles?
I believe that we do need more transit-oriented development close to our station. I think we have to, it's important that we streamline the approval process, of course, so that we can build more not-for-profit housing near BART stations, near all of our public transportation. We should not, however, override community input into this process. And environmentally safety is important for working communities of color. When it comes to SB 827, I didn't support it as it was written because I felt that it bypassed our environmental safety laws and it really gave away too much control to developers. So I believe that we can do what we've done in Richmond. We have built housing around our transit stations, our BART station. We've built housing, we've built affordable and for-profit housing around our BART stations. We are continuing to do that. We have several developments getting ready to break ground right now. And community input is so important. It is. However, there are some communities, affluent communities, who don't want affordable housing in their communities. And I think that when that happens, then we do need the state to intercede and come forward and bring solutions to say we're going to make sure that you build affordable housing, and we understand that you're wealthy, but these workers have to have a place to live, and better that they have a place to live close to where they work.
Thank you. The next question is, California's Chief Justice has complained that the legislature has underfunded California's court system. Do you think that's true? And if so, where would you find additional funds for California's court system? Ms. Beckles?
That really is a good question. I appreciate it. I think that just like everything in the state, all of our resources, our schools are underfunded. Our courthouses are underfunded. Our court system, rather, is underfunded. Everything is underfunded right now, and the reason for that, the reason that we have this problem is because we don't have the political will in Sacramento to ensure that we provide our residents, our systems, our schools with the resources that we deserve, that we're entitled to as a district. So in terms of funding, my answer, my solution really is simple, and it's always going to be consistent. I believe we have to tax the rich. They are not paying their fair share of taxes like the rest of us, and that's why we're in this mess that we're in. When we have a supermajority in Sacramento that is giving tax breaks to the wealthy, and yet the rest of us, are struggling, there's a problem. So my simple answer is we tax the rich. We come up with innovative, creative, bold solutions, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is by electing candidates like myself who are always going to make every decision based on people and not the profit of the billionaire class, who's going to always put the need of our court system, our schools, and our planet above profit.
Thank you.
So it is true that our court system is still underfunded, and I've talked to many lawyers and judges about this issue, and you see it pervasively across California. And I know what happened is, the economy collapsed in 2008. That impacted our state budget. California's budget is very much tied to our economic stability because our personal income is what really funds our budget. So our budget is very volatile. So when there's a crash, it impacts our state budget, right? And so that's what happened in 2008. We've started to regain some of the services that we've lost. For the first time this year, we actually had a surplus, which was great. Hopefully we'll have another one. And Jerry Brown is known for being frugal, and we've seen this across the board in many ways. He still maintains his frugality on this issue, on the courts being underfunded. They are desperately underfunded. So this is a very critical issue. This is our third branch of government. There's a reason we have a court system. We can't starve it to death by not providing any resources. I'm honored to be endorsed by the consumer attorneys. They work on justice issues across the state. They've talked to me about this issue as well. So I think ultimately we have to refund the court system, bring it back to where it was pre-2008 with the economic collapse, and ensure folks have the resources that they need. It is our third branch of government, and hopefully we'll have another budget surplus this next year, fingers crossed, where we can go back and fund it in full capacity.
Thank you. Our next question. At the federal level, tariffs have already resulted in increased costs for home builders, leading to more expensive housing. Do you believe that California can mitigate this on the state level? And how would you approach the problem?
Sure. So we all get to vote on a bond measure here now. You may have already voted on it, a $4 billion affordable housing bond measure. I support that. We need more resources for affordable housing. The other idea that I have that I've called for in my housing platform is the idea of a public infrastructure bank that could fund some of the affordable housing projects that we need. It could also do things like incentivize smart growth. So many folks in this neighborhood, in Berkeley, Oakland area, Richmond, other places have detached garages. They want to turn those into accessory dwelling units, ADUs, right, turn those into habitable spaces. But a lot of people don't have $200,000 lying around to do it, right? If we had a public infrastructure bank that could give a very low interest rate to fix those up to be habitable, if someone chose to house someone who's a low-income person for a period of time, that way it's a win-win-win. We need as many creative solutions as we can on the table. The other thing that I think we need to do is, I've been exploring this idea of creating more pathways of ownership, sort of like a rent-to-own model, where folks could be putting in their rent to go towards their down payment for a mortgage. We have to have more pathways for ownership. That is how people build wealth in this country. And right now, too many communities, the barriers are too high. So we've got to figure out creative ways in order to do that, but those are some of the ideas that I have.
Thank you. Ms. Beckles.
I think we should use our public land to be able to build more affordable housing for our homeless population. We should be able to build more not-for-profit housing. That's why I support Prop 10. I believe that we have to expand our ability to keep our residents from being displaced. I think that we need to use our public land to expand rent control in California, and we can do that. I believe that. Please don't believe those TV ads that you're seeing for no. It pulls at your heartstrings, but the truth, we should be leading in Sacramento.
Ms. Beckles, this question will go to you first. Do you believe that local school districts should have control over budgets and over approval of new charter schools? How would you work to increase funding and support the districts?
Our schools, local control is good. I was a part of groups who last summer we met to discuss the local funding control. But we're also in big trouble. We're also in big trouble because of the proliferation of charter schools. I believe that we have more than we need because at this point we're seeing our public school systems, our public schools dying from lack of resources because those resources are being pulled from charter schools. And so I will repeat it because I think it's important that we understand that we have to have a moratorium on charters so that our public school systems can be fully funded, so that our teachers can be paid what they're worth, so that our students can have the resources, good, healthy lunches, resources like, as I mentioned before, art and music. Enrichment, we are currently exploring ways to build more teacher housing because our teachers, when teachers can't afford to live in the cities where they work, that's a problem, and that is going to affect their ability to teach our children. So I do believe that we should have local funding control, but I believe that I don't think that we need to have the charter schools having more say in our communities than our public schools and teachers.
Thank you.
So the charter law was passed in 1993, and up until about a month ago, there have been 0 reforms on this law. And now, thankfully, the governor signed into law, there's been reforms that we closed for-profit charters. And frankly, that should have happened a long time ago. I strongly believe we need more reforms around our charter law. And so a couple things I think we need to do. One, I think charters need to be subject to the Brown Act, the Public Records Act, the Political Reform Act. These give more transparency and agency for local communities and parents to have insight into how these resources are being spent. I also think we have to make it easier to identify poor-performing charters and shut them down. And the question, though, specifically is around local resources. To me, this is the crux of the issue around charters. I think there are some good charters. I think there are some bad charters. But the problem is the local districts don't have enough control, right? And so I do think we have to figure out mechanisms to give districts more control, more agency around the schools that are in their area. That is, to me, the crux of the issue. If you have, a student who's at a traditional public school, the parent wants to send them to a charter, I won't begrudge a parent for doing that, but what happens is the resources then come out of that school and go to the charter school. What happens to that local district school that's left behind, that's already underfunded? Now they're underfunded more. And to me, the charters are a symptom of a bigger problem, that we are undervaluing and underfunding our public education system across the board. So these are the things that I think we have to figure out, and I want to work on this issue to figure out how to give local districts more control when these decisions are being made.
Thank you very much. This will be our last question this evening. How will you address the problem of a lack of mental health facilities and treatment, especially for low-income and homeless Californians? So I think the homelessness issue, there are 2 things that we need to solve this problem. And in Alameda County, we've seen a 40% increase in homelessness in the last 2 years. And we see it, right? We see it on our streets, and it's heartbreaking. So I think we need 2 things. 1 is more resources, and 2 is leadership on the issue. So when we talk about resources, 1, we need more outreach workers. We are at capacity. 2, we desperately need more mental health and drug and alcohol treatment. And remember, we didn't have homelessness in the same way that we do now until Ronald Reagan, in his infinite wisdom, decided to get rid of homelessness resources, right? So we've got to bring about more mental health resources.
which I think is very critical, and also just not for the homeless, but across the board. This is a pervasive issue facing many communities. The third thing we need is temporary rapid rehousing, and the fourth thing we need is a long-term permanent supportive housing, which is the hardest thing. The other thing we need is more leadership on this issue. Gavin Newsom has called for a Secretary of Homelessness, who's a cabinet-level position person who reports directly to him, whose sole job is to make sure our federal, state, county, and city resources are being spent effectively, and that we are tackling this issue like a regional issue that it is, and we are treating it like a state of emergency that it is. So I think we need that level of intentionality both on the resource front as well as the leadership front, and it's got to be our mayors working with our state electeds, working with Gavin and others to be able to do this, and that's why I'm honored to be endorsed by 8 of the 10 mayors of this district. I want to work with them. They are on the front lines of this fight, and I want to work with them to solve this problem.
Thank you very much. Ms. Beckles.
So I've been working in the mental health profession for 30 years, right here in the Bay Area. I've been working with specifically children's mental health for the last 18 years in Richmond, and I see firsthand the issues. We know that in 1989, all the state hospitals were closed. People who needed hospitalization, they needed those services, were placed on the street. They were put on the street. When I worked for a company in Hayward, a nonprofit, it was so easy at the time, and this was in the 90s, to be able to find places for people to live. That's not the case anymore, because those single-room occupancy places were all closed down, or cares were closed down. We are seeing less and less services and service providers because the reimbursement rate is so low. So the way that we address this problem is through a single-payer healthcare for all system, where people will get the reimbursement that they deserve, because it won't even be about reimbursement, because people will have the opportunity for free healthcare. The other thing is we also need a housing for all, a not-for-profit system, and my Housing for All plan will build hundreds of thousands of new affordable housing in 10 years, because we are in this crisis right now because people can't afford a place to live, and many of those folks have mental health challenges that I, again, have seen up front and personal, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running for state office, because I want to do something about it, and I care.
Thank you very much. We've come to the time to do closing statements, and we're going to have 1.5-minute closing statements from each of your candidates. We'll begin with Ms. Beckles.
Well, thank you once again, League of Women Voters, for putting this on, and thank you all so much for coming out here, for caring about this process and wanting to learn more about your candidates, this race, this election. There is a lot at stake, and let me tell you what is at stake. We can elect someone who will be a champion for working people, who will never take 1 cent from billionaires. I am a union member. I'm a Teamsters 856. I've been a union member my entire working life, so you can trust me to always put the needs of working people first. So we can elect the working class champion, or we can open the door for more billionaires, for-profit control of our state government. I am outraged to see more than $2 million from across the country pour into this election in our progressive district. Again, I won't do it, but I've got mailers. You all got mailers from people, from PACs in this election who have spent $300,000 already, right? And they are industry lobbyists against single payer and are for profit. So the PACs, and one of the treasurers, her name is Ashley Titus, this is important, is a member of the far right-wing Federalist Society. 1 month ago, she signed a Women for Kavanaugh letter. These conservatives know what they're buying. I've been endorsed by so many unions, so many nonprofits. I will be your champion, and I may not articulate it the way you want it to, but look at my track record. Look at what I've done in Richmond, and I ask for your support in this movement.
Thank you. Your time is ended. Thank you. Ms. Wick.
seat after my daughter was born. And I'm running because I want to create a better future for her and for all the kids in all of our communities. And my opponent said a lot about the people that are supporting my campaign. I don't know who this person is she's talking about, who belongs to some group. But what I do know is that I've had 220 house parties or more across this district. We have thousands of volunteers across this district who are knocking on doors. We knocked on 35,000 doors in the primary. We're going to knock on 100,000 doors in this race. I believe in organizing. I've spent 20 years of my life organizing in progressive politics, in the labor movement, in the women's movement, for President Obama, for Howard Dean. I've traveled all across this country to organize. I've ended up home here. This is my home to organize in this moment of time right now. Because I believe we're in a critical moment in our nation's history. And we're going to look back 10, 20, 30 years from now and say, what did you do then? And I want to be able to look my daughter in the eye and say that I did everything I could to fund our public schools and to create safe public transportation and to solve our homelessness crisis. I'm honored to be endorsed by 8 of the 10 mayors and many city council members across this district, a lot of great local support, 22 labor unions across this district, Planned Parenthood, the community health centers, East Bay for Everyone, a pro-housing organization from this community have endorsed my campaign because they know that I'm the one who can go to Sacramento, and I'm not just going to talk about rhetoric. I'm going to get stuff done. That's what the voters want. Someone who's going to go roll up their sleeves, work hard, work in a broad coalition of people to solve these problems. I'm going to go to Sacramento not just to vote the right way, but fight the right way and lead the right way.
And East Bay Housing Organizations and the Rockridge Community Planning Council, we want to thank our Assembly District candidates for their participation this evening. Now we can